about Mr. Jha. Prabir Jha is an alumni of St. Stephen's College, Delhi, and XLRI Jamshedpur, and is currently the Global Chief People Officer at Cipla. Prabir brings with him an impeccable academic and professional record. After doing his master's, Prabir was selected for the prestigious civil services, and as a bureaucrat, handled the entire gamut of HR and IR issues of Indian ordnance factories. On his switch to the corporate world, after almost 10 years in the government, he has worked in senior management positions in organizations like Thermax and Tech Mahindra, and has been the CHRO at two NYSE-listed Indian majors, Dr. Reddy's and Tata Motors, as also being the group CHRO for Reliance Industries Limited. He has handled all areas in HR with special interest in change management, organizational development interventions, global HR strategy, employer branding, and leadership capability development. Prabir has consistently been featured in the list of most powerful HR professionals in India and has a number of awards for his credit. Among others, he is a recipient of the National Institute of Personnel Management Medal, the Reckitt and Coleman Award, and the Citibank Leaders Award at XLRI for the highest level of academic performance, competence, originality, creativity, communication skills, and leadership, as also the Director's Medal in the Civil Service Foundation course. He was conferred the Asia HRD 2000 for outstanding contribution to the fields of human resource development. In addition, Prabir is an accomplished thought leader whose articles have been published in various publications, many of which you will be following on LinkedIn, I believe, and Twitter. He's a sought-after speaker, exclusive course, and visiting faculty at various business schools and top management schools. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Mr. Prabir Jha. Sir, welcome to the platform HR Virtual Learning Zone. Please allow me to share that we are houseful on both the sessions now. So we are doing this live streaming parallel for the first time, and we are going houseful on both the sessions. So sir, now I would be on mute. You may kindly direct me on the movement. I will just quickly bring up your slide, which you had been kind enough to share with us. So I will be bringing that on.
Yes.
I will do it on parallel windows. So sir, I will just request you to give me 1 minute so that I can do it on both the parallel windows.
All right. Whenever you are ready, I'm happy to start.
Yes, sir. We are live. Let me take a confirmation from the audience on the audio part at both the platforms. So I would request everyone in the audience, like they always help me, if you could kindly give me a confirmation on the deck, on the video, and on the voice. Great. So can you see Mr. Prabir Jha? I'll just need to take that confirmation. Awesome. Awesome. So please, the session is all yours. I will be on mute and you may guide me on the movement of time.
All right. Suprit, thank you very much. This has been an honor, and thank you for people who've logged in. This is an opportunity more to share thoughts and reflections. I don't claim to have all the wisdom or all the answers, but the idea is through this dialogue to at least start thinking and thinking hopefully differently. So my first slide is really, to set the context, because when Suprit asked me to speak on a subject of can HR make a difference to business, it actually provoked me. I think it's the only function, unfortunately, which still keeps asking itself this question, does it make a difference? And the simple answer is that if HR did not make a difference to business, why would HR skills be in such demand? You look for HR people all the time and you don't get good enough HR people. And therefore organizations look for HR because in my belief is that HR makes a huge difference. But how it makes a difference and how it makes a difference in an equally profound and impactful manner across organizations is of course a matter of debate. So if you just look back to Alfred Sloan, who set up General Motors, and the famous line that he had said, "Take my assets, leave my people, and in 5 years I will have it all back." Many years down the line, I think this line reads as true, if not more. Fundamentally, this is really the thesis that we are going to be exploring in this session today. So, can I have my first poll questions, if you can flash that? I would like all of you to look at the question, because fundamentally, I just want all of us to also have an opportunity of saying a yes or a no. Do you think HR makes a difference to business? If you have the poll question up there, then we'll take a look. You can respond. You can respond. Yeah, I can see that. So please respond, whatever, please select one, yes or no. Do you think? I believe so, but you don't have to agree with me. So do you think HR can make an impact on business? So it's a very simple question, and once Sukrit flashes the response, then we'll move on to the next part of the session.
Sure, sir. So as a standard, we give a minute and a half for the audience to feed in their inputs.
Okay.
But I guess for your question, we don't need that much time, because in both the parallel sessions, I have 88% already vote in. All 88% votes are already in.
Okay, I'm sure that most of them responding are HR people. If we had non-HR people, it would possibly been interesting, but nonetheless.
Good part is for your session, we do have a good mix.
Oh, all right. That's good.
Also joining in, yes.
Excellent. Excellent.
Okay, so since we are already 94% and 91% on, so I would request everyone to kindly fill in their inputs quickly. I will be closing the polls in a count of 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I'm closing the poll now and sharing the results on the screen.
All right, that's not bad. I mean, it's a 99%. It can't get better than that. Short of Six Sigma, we are almost there. So most of us on this conversation today believe that HR can make an impact on the business. Had we asked a question, does HR make an impact? Maybe the answers could have been a little different, but there's a reason I did not ask that. Does HR make an impact? But it is more a normative question. Do you think HR can make an impact on the business? And I think it's a very strong 99% response. So thank you, Sukrit. Can you go back to my presentation, please? And if, while that slide comes up, I think it's important for us to also remind ourselves that the question was about impact on business. If you look closely, what is it that we typically hear in most organizations as what HR is doing? I mean, how many conversations about HR in many, many companies are really about HR making a difference to business? What we hear is something very different. And while Sukrit brings up my next slide, we typically hear of HR as a policy police, as a watchdog, as possibly a costly, maybe an ineffective, incompetent function, often disconnected from the work of business. Maybe at times it's even values, eroding. Now, I'm not saying all of this is true, but the fact is there's a lot of noise about what is HR doing. HR, otherwise on the good side, does yoga classes and birthday messages and flowers and lunches, etc., etc. Now, all of this might be absolutely fine, but what should we do as HR? And do as HR to enhance business? I'm not saying all the nice little things are not important. They are very important. But it is very important to answer the fundamental question that what should we do as HR to be impactful to business? And I think this is really what we want to look at. So if I can go to the next slide. Today my belief is that business is people and people is business. And I think it's very important to keep that perspective in mind. And when I say people, I don't necessarily mean employees, very clearly employees. But if you look at the larger business ecosystem, whether it's your stakeholders like vendors, partners, dealers, maybe investors, they're all human beings. And at the end of the day, I believe that while there is a lot of merit for logic and rationale, people are people. They also think from the heart. And I think HR can redefine a lot of what it does if it can help redefine its catchment. Employees very clearly, but it could actually go beyond employees. In my own experience as a CHRO of many, many years across different companies, I mean, that was a learning I once had, where I realized that actually if you want to make a difference to business, just looking at your own employees is not enough. Maybe you need to start sharing your expertise and guidance and advice to your larger stakeholders, the supplier community, who may not have access to the kind of HR thinking that big corporations have. But if you do not intervene in their HR ecosystem and help them, you are intervening far too late in the downstream. And that's of no business consequence. It's a lot about shaping of your paradigm and redefining classical HR to move away from the world of its own employees to a world beyond. But even if you look at people in your own company, and the slide shows that, the challenge with HR compared to, let's say, a hardcore sales exercise, that the result not always about direct causality. It is either of derived causality, or at times it's about a correlation. And I think it's very important for HR practitioners also not to feel embarrassed or ashamed or small, because that's the nature of the beast. It's very easy to do things which are very logical and very, directly impactful. But HR is all about influence. And one of the biggest things I tell a lot of HR people, that if HR has to add value to business, it's not always necessarily direct, but the role of influence and positive influence that HR can exercise makes a huge difference to business impact. For example, look at employee engagement. At the end of the day, the way people feel engaged or don't feel engaged impacts their discretionary effort. In a lot of particularly customer-facing businesses, it impacts customer satisfaction. And if customers are not satisfied, or other stakeholders are not satisfied, results can actually crumble. So where do you intervene, and where do you see the final impact? And at the end of the day, it is not HR's job to own employee engagement, which is the other myth that a lot of HR people have. So what do? Oh, I manage employee engagement. You don't manage employee engagement. You influence the thinking on employee engagement. It is the responsibility of the managers to own and manage employee engagement. But to help them get there, to get them to be coached, to know which levers to use, is really the big job of HR. So just look at it this way. You have to be an outstanding coach. You must know your domain so well. You must be able to be a credible influencer, so that your stakeholders are able to do what you advise them and take that to a logical conclusion, which finally impacts business. And I think this is a perspective that has to really come with a lot of HR people, and I dare say with a lot of business or line managers. Many line managers are very poor line managers because they believe anything to do with people management is not their responsibility, it is the responsibility of HR. Now, this is an alibi which is absolutely unacceptable. You have to take ownership, but at the same time, you need the value of expertise, you need the value of support, you need the value of honest, show the mirror support. And I think that's the role of HR. So just as an example, I showed you employee engagement as how HR actually drives business impact and the dollar value. Similarly, if you look at a London School of Economics research, contrary to what people think, is the impact of strategy or quality or technology or even R&D. A significant 17% impact on profitability and productivity came from people measures. Now, it is very, very important to again realize it is not about an immediate correlation, but it's about literally what's the root cause. Where do you, dive in and really understand which is the lever which makes a huge difference. So just because it is difficult to establish a quantitative model of showing the causality between the HR lever and business is not to mean that HR does not make a difference. In fact, in my world, HR makes all the difference to business. And sometimes people joke with me that, Prabir, at the end of the day, if you have no one to blame, you can always blame HR for every aspect of business issue in the company. So that's, in the sense of a bit of humor, but the reality is that HR has to understand that you exist in organizations finally to help the organization succeed. And if it's a business organization, very clearly you have to help the business metrics improve. And that is really where we have to improve our impact, our thinking, and our focus. So if I can go to the next slide. The next slide really talks about why is HR mattering more than ever before. So if you look at it, HR, or I dare say organizations of any shape and size, typically are looking at about 5 key areas that are becoming major business challengers. Ridden well, they could actually be great value impactors for the companies. Not handled well, it could spell the doom of an organization. So I won't get through all the details, but I just want to highlight the 5 key themes. One is around globalization. As more and more companies get globally integrated, either the front ends or the back ends or the networks get intertwined, a lot of globalization has demands on HR or things which are to do with HR. Things around people, skill sets, where do they reside, how mobile are they, how do people learn and collaborate even when they work across different time zones, how do the supply lines get interlinked with production lines to serve a customer in an altogether third part of the world, how do you manage diversity, complexity, ambiguity, challenges of communication, culture, and so on and so forth. So globalization is not just about a strategy. The deployment of strategy has huge people implications, and it is often underscored, under-leveraged, especially even when you're doing an M&A. In my own experience, some of the best examples have been where it started from people and ended with people, and you're not a postscript. But globalization will have huge implications on people issues when it comes to business impact. The second is on profitability. I mean, we are going through a lot of the VUCA reality. Profits are under challenge. Things are getting tougher. And at the end of the day, when profitability is under tension, it is all about how creative will your workforce be? How innovative will your workforce be? Is there adequate free flow of information? Is there enough of diversity in thinking? Otherwise, profitability is an outcome. But a lot of things, including classical, traditional, many years it has worked for me syndrome, can actually erode profitability because the operating context has changed. And a lot of it is to do with HR. And I'll talk a little bit about that in some of my subsequent slides. The third issue is around intellectual capital. Where is the knowledge? Where is the skill? Is this a distinct competitive advantage for an organization? How do you make sure that the intellectual capital you have today actually gets stronger, multiplies, and does not erode, does not get stale? How does it enable a business to become a game changer? It's all about the talent bench strength that you have. And over the last some days, I've been tweeting a lot about this because I'm so convinced that the inability of leaders and managers to define and continually raise the bar on talent is one of the biggest challenges in companies. Because we all like to talk the right talk, but when it comes to actually taking calls on average talent or poor talent, we struggle. And I think, if not today, the implications of this on business is bound to happen some quarters down the line. Similarly, on technology, I think the world is getting more and more digital. It's going to be more technology leveraged. A lot of productivity enhancement is going to come through technology. In fact, organizations and their viability will be a function of whether they are as tech savvy or not. How do you manage the information curve? How do you make sure you create a culture where information and access to information, access to digitized information becomes a way of life? So it is not always just about a technology solution, it's about a culture solution. And if you do not have the right culture to support the technology moves that are happening in the world, I think we would have missed a huge opportunity. And I think HR has to be really at the forefront of even this thinking that is happening. And last, change, and more change, and I'll talk about that in subsequent slides. I don't think it really needs much of an explanation, but the fact is we are living in a world of discontinuous change, where life cycles of anything are shrinking, and for people to say, my God, you've just changed the other day and you're changing again, but that's really the reality of life. How do you help organizations? How do you help people in organizations? How do you help people in the larger catchment of that ecosystem to get comfortable with change? So it's very important as you reflect that we are living in a world where all of these are increasingly getting issues for companies and issues for people in companies, issues for customers of such companies. And I think in all of this, one thread which integrates everything is this issue of what does HR do and what does HR have to do. Now, it is not to say flowers are not important or team lunches are not important. They are very important, but it is equally important for HR to go up the value chain. Because if you do not go up the value chain at the right time, chances are you will be kind of swamped by a tsunami and you will actually build your own redundancy. So I think let's go on to the next slide, and I have one slide again to have a quick poll, and we'll do it quickly. So Prith, if you can help me with that poll question, please.
Sure, sir. Sir, before that, I have a small request. I will just interrupt for 1 minute. Because of the housefulness of the session, both the sessions are houseful. So I have an announcement for everyone in this audience bay. I would request all of you to kindly be attentive. Please do not use multiple windows, because the system will identify multiple window usage as a non-attentive attendee and will dismiss the line. So please request you to keep only the webinar, this virtual learning session window active and minimize the other windows. Else your line would be dismissed and someone else who is waiting in the bay would get the opportunity to join it. And just a quick update again, can I just request everyone to let me know if sir's video is going through clearly and audio is clear? Great. So we are good in terms of the projection. So I'm just running the next poll now.
Yeah. So the question that I have here for all of us is, what do you think has the maximum impact on business? What do you think? A lot of people talk about recruitment, some talk about performance management, training, career planning, employment legislation. Very classical HR heads. Which one do you think has the maximum impact on business? And you can poll your responses now.
This time we'll have different percentages now.
Interesting. So let's see what the responses are.
So we have a minute and 15 up. So I would do the reverse counting now. So the poll will close in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm closing the polls now and sharing the result on the screen.
All right. Okay, so let's see. 31% people are saying performance management has the maximum impact on business, 29% on recruitment, 24% on career planning, 16% on training, and none on employment legislation. So this is also very interesting. So thank you for your comments and your responses. See, this is also one of the ways in which I think HR has to think. You know, while one cannot debate any of your responses, and maybe I am going to do a separate spin on this in just a while as we change slides. But Sukrit, while you change slides, I think employment legislation itself, why would HR again confine itself to believe that its ability to influence legislation is limited? At the end of the day, if HR is a community across industries, companies, is able to get its thought together, a lot of public policy influencing, a lot of advocacy is something that HR can do. So a lot of what we are trying to be or trying to do is actually restricted by our own imagination. And my appeal to all of us is a lot of impact to business can come when HR gets into the business of saying, I am also in the business of advocacy. If you do not do that, you are again thinking small. You are again saying, okay, that's really my area of influence. So I just made that comment because I saw zero on that, not even 1%. So, but let's look at my own thinking. So if I can change slides, you know, in the next some minutes, I want to talk about 5 things, one after the other, which I believe we should be thinking. It's not just about recruitment. It's just not about performance management. It's not about training or careers. So in a way, you can look at it. It was a bit of a life score or a you know a dodge poll. My views are that the 5 key things that HR must think about and must influence, starting with organization design. See, it doesn't matter what is the scale and size of a company. You might be a very small startup, you might be a giant Fortune 100 company. You might be in industry X, industry Y. You might be going through a lot of turbulent times. You might be, you know, anticipating something which could go wrong. You might be conservative, you might be aspirational. But the fact is, the question HR must ask the company and help the company solve for is, are you designed for success? You know, designs often have a natural ability to get stale and static. We start building organizations around personalities. The context change, but the boxes remain the same. And when I say organization structure, it is just not about the boxes. It is also about the process flows between the boxes. It is about ensuring that is the organization designed appropriately to the business strategy it is seeking to execute. It's not good enough to have a strategy, but if your structure is not designed and aligned right, no strategy is going to be successful. Design also has an issue when you start looking at career planning and talent planning. Is your design appropriate to help people build careers with you? And the right people have an opportunity of building the right career, are the landing stations right? So a lot of it is about pressure testing the relevance and validity of any organization design at any point in time. But it is something which HR must master the art of knowing. What are the principles of an organization design? How are the principles changing? How is the marketplace likely to change? And therefore, do I anticipate and change my organization to be ready? For example, may not be a great example, but if suppose GST were to be happening, does it need changes in the organization architecture? Does it need changes in the commercial organization? Where would you build capability? How would you realign the organization? Do you anticipate enough? You're getting into another line of business. or the regulations are changing, what demands would it have on different other parts of the organization, and so on and so forth. What is the appropriate span of control? Is technology allowing you to widen it? Is spatial distribution constricting it? If you're living in the VUCA reality, how dynamic are you about your organization design changes? Or is it that you've announced it now for the next 5 years, you cannot change it? And if you change it, how do you explain? If you're living in a classical world of command and control and you move to a matrix, oh, you'll have a huge pushback. How do you help move to a matrix organization, and so on and so forth? Do you even have a hierarchy of jobs, or do you create a network of teams which work with each other? All of these are issues about organization design, and fundamentally, it sets the tone, the character of an organization. So the way you design an organization has huge implications all the way from people, culture, agility, finally business impact and success. If you do not have something which allows the organization to be agile, you are leaving money on the table if you're not eroding value. So I think it's a very, very important dimension, and I think it really somewhere sits as a very important priority, particularly as I see the world today. The second, Sukrit, if you can help me with, is what I largely call the leadership agenda. Now you can put talent to be subsumed in it, but ultimately, every organization today, I think, is struggling with this concept of leadership. There are people and people and people, there are aspirations and ambitions, but where is the leadership? And I think leadership which worked yesterday may not work today. Leadership is not just about just having the knowledge and skills. Leadership is not about having X decades of experience. Leadership is what the operating business context demands for an organization to be more impactful. And I think it is very, very important because people today work for people. Is the leadership looking at its own role as just doing the nuts and bolts of classical business, or does it relate to a larger cause of leadership? What are the attributes of leadership in your organization? How is it changing? Should it be changing? How soon should it be changing? How do you identify the right leaders? Typically, when you promote a salesperson to the first line responsibility, who do you promote? In most companies, I find the people getting promoted are people who are your best salesmen. But are they your best managers? Will they be your best leaders? And therefore, the ability to even know what questions to ask when you start taking leadership calls becomes very, very key. And I think HR has a huge responsibility of hand-holding, educating, challenging a lot of the business leaders to help them understand that just that old world reality does not work anymore. And I think this entire issue of growing and developing your own trees, your own leaders, I think through different twists and turns becomes a very, very important dimension of HR's handholding. How do you coach the leaders? How do you create a culture where people get receptive to feedback and feedback from all over? How do you make sure that you have enough bench strength of leadership at every level? Because one of the biggest constraints for growth could be you have an opportunity, you can buy technology, but you don't have the right leaders who can actually take ownership of taking the company forward, and therefore you let the opportunity pass. And I very strongly believe the best leaders hire the best, who in turn hire the best. They keep the best. If you have average managers and average leaders, they hire still more average people, who in turn hire still more average guys because they want to hire people who never challenge them. And these are big myths to surface, bring to the table, and destroy. Because organizations of tomorrow are not going to be ones which are low on the depth of the leadership pipeline. So to me, it's a very important agenda of helping organizations articulate, re-articulate, fine-tune, tweak what is appropriate leadership for a certain phase of the company's evolution. And I think this is a very important HR ask. The next, the third point that I want to talk about, Sukrit, is about being the custodian of organization culture. I'm very surprised that you know, something as strategic as culture is very difficult for a lot of business leaders to understand. It seems fuzzy, it seems soft, but soft is hard. And it is HR's fundamental job as a trustee of the organization culture to make sure it is on the leadership agenda. It gets discussed on the table. You've got to bring it up. What is that culture? Define your culture. Is this relevant and adequate for the challenge you're going through or the aspirations you nurse for yourself? If not, maybe a culture of yesterdays is not good enough. It might actually destroy value tomorrow. And therefore, what should change of your culture? And culture is always a moving definition. It is never static. But it is so important because the right people join or stay in a company for the right culture. So some cultures are all about, let's say, job security. So you would attract talent which is all about job security. Some cultures are going to be about autonomy, space, creativity. So you will attract a different breed of people. So depending on what is relevant to your operating context, HR must shape the thinking of organization culture. It must destroy or at least raise questions for destruction of certain aspects of culture if it has outlived its utility, even as business realities change. And all of this that I'm saying is in the context of being relevant and enabling and supportive of business outcomes. It's not just about a soft, fuzzy HR agenda, but the wrong culture with the right business strategy actually is a disruptive tool and a disruptive thought. And I think HR has to get comfortable of trying to explain culture, not just a soft, fuzzy, flowers to employees exercise, but something which is actually so central to the business success of an organization. Because the wrong culture in a wrong business environment is suicidal. The fourth thing that I want to talk to you guys is about mitigating enterprise risk. HR becomes so critical to business success and business longevity. Today, a lot of enterprise risks are not just financial, are not just technological. They are to do with people. What's the point? And that's how we started our session today. What's the point of having a great, infrastructure, but if you do not have stability in your ranks, if you're not able to attract the right kind of people? What does it do if your culture is mismatched with your business priorities? What if your values and behaviors that exist in a company actually throw out or drive out the talent that you very clearly wanted to keep? What if the organization is not following compliance expectations, regulations? If you're in the business of an M&A, how do you make sure as HR, you ensure that the culture, the process, the people identification, the risks are flagged and are mitigated? How do you look at the quality of succession planning? How do you anticipate and push the line managers to help you think through about the likely skills shortage that might happen, even as the world of technology changes? How do you look at things around information security, data privacy? These are live business issues. And I think HR has to understand that it is part of its remit to ensure that it mitigates enterprise risks. And I'm just giving you a flavor of what I believe are very, very important. But you can add to your list. But how much of our focus is on these issues? How much of this do we as HR bring to the table? And how do we drive and influence things? Starting from the board, what do we need to do about that? So flagging the issue and then ideating and solving for this problem, I think is a very, very important dimension of HR adding value to business. Because otherwise there is no business. And last, I want to talk about something that I had flashed earlier. And it is managing this never-ending state of change and transformation. The VUCA reality of today is not of tomorrow, it is today, it's by the minute. And in a world of continuous change, in a world of continuous disruption, HR's role is about anticipation. It is about managing resistance. It's about enabling people to learn to get comfortable with ambiguity and change, to help embrace a culture which is very pro-change, to create excitement about possibilities, to communicate, to create a culture of proactive communication. And how do you therefore help the entire ecosystem to be one which adapts, which learns, which is agile? Because ultimately, today, business is about shorter shelf lives. It is about getting ready to get on to from one life cycle to the next life cycle into the third life cycle. It is all about enabling people to build skills, capabilities, and the attitudes to be able to kind of move the agenda forward. So I think HR is again a very, very, very strong enabler and starts responsibility of showing the mirrors to everyone, starting from the chairman, starting from the boards to the CEO. And I think this is a world which is coming. And if we don't start rocking things now, changing things now, hand-holding people to a new change, helping identify leaders who know how to manage change. And it's not just about therefore being soft and cuddly, it's about a proactive ownership of managing change. So I think these are 5 broad issues that I very strongly believe, are going to be very strong levers if the HR function actually has to move up the value chain and to really be seen as a very credible partner sitting on the same table as anyone else on the board. So let's move on to the next slide, and I'm just in a wrap up so that I can have some time for some questions. So the role of HR today is really about overhaul, moving from one devoted set of activities to one committed to outcomes, all in the service of achieving organizational excellence, business impact, and the survival of the corporation. So that's really what the story is. That's what I believe the remit of HR is. And I guess the next slide is just, Sukrit, a small thank you to all of you who've been on this call and have allowed me to share my thoughts. I mean, all of you are welcome to follow me, and my thoughts I tweet fairly extensively on Twitter or on LinkedIn. And we're happy to, today is not about whether you agree or disagree, but the idea is to say, is this a possible point of view? And if it is, how would I respond to it? What would be our ask? So I'm going to stop here. We have, I think, still 10-15 minutes to go. And if there are questions, and if I can see them somewhere on, I don't see them right now on my screen, but if I can see questions, or if Sukrit, you're seeing it, if you can ask questions, I'm happy to take some questions and respond to them.
Sure, sir. So what I would do is I will just quickly take a count of all the questions that I have received. I'm sending you a question which came on pro rata basis to me on the chat window.
Okay.
I will read out the question for chat window, but I just sent it to in one of the windows. So I will read out the question for everyone. This question came from Kumar Saurabh.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir. You were trying to say something? Please go ahead, sir.
No, so I just have one question. What are the key metrics and indices HR is using to denote business impact, engagement and retention related, recruitment related, L&D in particular? So, at the end of the day, my comment is you might still have functional and sub-functional metrics. And some of them could be lead indicators, some of them could be lag, and there are a whole range of things. But ultimately, the issue is how do we connect that to the larger operating business metrics? So, for example, if you're tracking EBITDA, and if you're in HR, the way to look at this is what metrics would I track which will help me ensure that I contribute to the EBITDA target of this company? And therefore, you will look at metrics around productivity, you will look at value added per rupee of employee cost, you will look at every additional headcount manning and what is the return to it, and so on and so forth. Engagement is a derived score. It's about showing a correlation that enhancing engagement scores actually has led to either better retention, better commitment, and therefore, if you've reduced employee turnover, for example, if you've reduced employee turnover, the cost that you would have incurred on replacing the talent, on possibly a time when you've stopped serving the customer as well, there is an opportunity cost of that. So there is also an issue of attrition and there is an issue of depletion. And all of these metrics make sense, but you have to decide how do you connect all the HR kind of metrics finally to the larger operating metrics. And I think that's really where we have to go.